Here's something nobody tells you when you're busy chasing everything. The finish line keeps moving. You get the promotion, but now you need the corner office. You buy the house, but now you need the renovation. You hit your savings goal, but suddenly it doesn't feel like enough anymore. And somewhere in the middle of all this running, something terrifying happens. You forget what you were running toward in the first place. Right now, at this very moment, you probably have more than anyone in history could have dreamed of. More technology, more choices, more opportunities, more information at your fingertips. And yet, do you feel free? Do you feel light? Do you wake up excited? Or do you wake up exhausted before the day even begins? Let me guess. Your closet is full, but you wear the same 5 things. Your calendar is packed, but you can't remember the last time you felt truly present. Your phone has 1,000 contacts, but you feel lonely. You're achieving things, checking boxes, staying busy, but something essential is missing. Peace, clarity, the feeling that your life actually belongs to you. What if I told you that the problem isn't that you're not doing enough? What if the real problem is that you're doing too much of what doesn't matter? You've been sold a lie, the lie that more equals better, more productivity, more possessions, more connections, more stimulation, more everything. Society taught you to measure your worth by how much you can stack on top of your life. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. The heaviest lives are rarely the happiest ones. Think about it. When was the last time you felt completely at ease? Not distracted, not anxious, not waiting for the next notification, not mentally running through tomorrow's to-do list. Just at ease. For most people, that moment is so rare it's almost forgotten. And that's not normal. That's not how life is supposed to feel. Simplicity isn't about giving up your dreams. It's not about living in a tiny house with 3 possessions and rejecting ambition. Simplicity is about something far more powerful. It's about deciding what deserves space in your life and having the courage to remove everything else. Because here's what happens when you subtract the unnecessary. The necessary becomes obvious. When you remove the noise, you finally hear the signal. When you let go of what doesn't serve you, you create room for what transforms you. This isn't just another self-help idea. This is a fundamental redesign of how you move through the world. It's about reclaiming your attention from a society that profits from your distraction. It's about protecting your time in a culture that glorifies busyness. It's about choosing meaning over accumulation, depth over volume, and presence over performance. In the chapters ahead, we're going to dismantle the beliefs that keep your life complicated. We'll explore why overwhelm isn't a badge of honor, why owning less can make you wealthier, why saying no is the most powerful word in your vocabulary, and why slowing down might be the fastest way to get where you actually want to go. You'll discover that simplicity isn't a sacrifice. It's an unlock. It's the key to a life that feels lighter to carry and richer to live. A life where your days reflect your values, where your choices come from intention rather than obligation, where you're no longer drowning in everything around you, but guided by what truly matters within you. This journey isn't about perfection. It's about permission. Permission to stop chasing what everyone else is chasing. Permission to build a life that looks different, feels different, and honors who you actually are, not who you think you should be. The magic of a simple life isn't that it's easy. The magic is that it's yours. So take a breath, because everything is about to shift, not through addition, but through subtraction, not by doing more, but by releasing what never mattered in the first place. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop letting life overwhelm you. Chapter 1. Stop letting life overwhelm you. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much sleep you got last night. It's the exhaustion that comes from carrying too many invisible weights, unfinished conversations, unopened emails, delayed decisions, unmet expectations, forgotten promises to yourself. These things don't show up on your calendar, but they show up in your chest, your shoulders, your jaw. They show up in how you sigh when you wake up in the morning. Here's what most people don't realize. Overwhelm doesn't arrive all at once like a storm. It accumulates slowly, quietly, like dust. One extra commitment here, one more subscription there, another app, another group chat, another expectation you agreed to without thinking. And before you know it, you're not living your life anymore. You're managing it. You're firefighting. You're reacting to whatever screams the loudest instead of directing your energy toward what actually moves your life forward. And the worst part, it feels normal because everyone around you is drowning too. Your coworker is drowning. Your neighbor is drowning. Your college friend who posts inspiring quotes is probably drowning. We've normalized the chaos so much that when someone says, "I'm overwhelmed," the response is usually "same" or "welcome to adulthood." But just because something is common doesn't mean it's acceptable. Just because everyone is struggling doesn't mean struggle is the only option. Let me be clear. Being overwhelmed is not a sign that you're living a full life. It's a sign that you're living a cluttered one. There's a massive difference. Overwhelm happens when everything tries to matter at the same time. Every notification demands your immediate attention. Every message feels urgent. Every opportunity feels like it might be your last. Every problem feels like it's yours to solve. Every headline feels like something you should care about. And when everything demands your attention, you end up giving your full attention to absolutely nothing meaningful. You become busy without being productive, active without being fulfilled, stimulated without being satisfied. It's motion without progress. You can spend entire years like this, moving constantly, but never actually moving forward, running on a treadmill that's disguised as a career, a social life, a routine. So how do you stop it? The first step toward a simpler life isn't cleaning out your closet or deleting apps. The first step is interrupting the automatic flood of demands that pour into your life every single day. You have to stop reacting to everything and start choosing what actually deserves a response. And that requires something most people don't practice anymore: awareness. Awareness means pausing long enough to ask yourself a question that changes everything. Is this important, or is it just loud? Think about that for a second. Loud things overwhelm you. Important things grow you. Loud things scream for your attention and give you nothing in return. Important things might whisper, but they transform your life when you actually listen. Most of what overwhelms you is just noise. It's not life or death. It's not even life or discomfort. It's just noise. The argument in the comment section, the email that could wait until tomorrow, the group chat that's been going for 6 hours about absolutely nothing, the notification about a sale you don't need, The news story that makes you anxious but doesn't change your next decision. You've been conditioned to treat everything like it's urgent. But urgency is one of the biggest lies of modern life. True urgency is rare. Manufactured urgency is everywhere. Here's what happens when you stop letting life overwhelm you. You start noticing something powerful. Not everything needs your involvement. Not every problem is yours to carry. Not every request deserves your yes. Some problems belong to other people. Some problems belong to time. And some problems were never problems to begin with. They were just distractions wearing a problem costume. You also start to realize that most of the things overwhelming you exist only because you never questioned them. You said yes when someone asked for your time, not because you wanted to, but because you didn't know how to say no. You took on a responsibility because it seemed like the right thing to do, not because it aligned with your goals. You joined a committee, accepted the invitation, agreed to help, committed to the project, all without asking yourself the most important question. Does this deserve a piece of my life? Overwhelm is rarely something life does to you. More often, it's something you allow by default. You let it in. You said yes without thinking. You agreed without evaluating. You added without subtracting. And here's the uncomfortable truth that's actually liberating. If you allowed it, you can also change it. Stopping. Overwhelm doesn't require superhuman discipline. It doesn't require waking up at 4 a.m. or having a perfectly color-coded planner. It requires one thing: ownership. Ownership of your time. Ownership of your choices. Ownership of your boundaries. Ownership of your life. Without ownership, your life belongs to whoever asks for it first. Your calendar fills up with other people's priorities. Your energy drains into other people's emergencies. Your attention scatters across other people's agendas. And at the end of the day, you collapse into bed wondering why you feel so empty when you were so busy. With ownership, your life becomes yours again. And when your life becomes yours again, simplicity isn't something you have to force. It emerges naturally because you're no longer saying yes to everything that knocks on your door. Now here's the part most people miss, and it's the difference between temporary relief and lasting change. Simplicity is not about having less to manage. It's about having less that needs managing. You can declutter your home and still have a cluttered mind. You can delete apps and still have a chaotic schedule. You can organize your desk and still feel emotionally scattered. Because the real clutter isn't in your closet. It's in your commitments. It's in your mental space. It's in the gap between what you value and how you actually spend your time. The real work happens inside. It happens when you stop accepting every invitation just because it arrived. It happens when you stop carrying guilt that isn't yours. It happens when you stop trying to prove something to people who aren't even paying attention. When life stops overwhelming you, you gain something most people have forgotten exists: mental breathing room, space to think clearly, space to feel deeply, space to make better decisions instead of reactive ones, space to hear yourself again, space to remember what you actually care about underneath all the noise. That space is where simplicity begins. And more importantly, that space is where fulfillment grows. Because you can't build a meaningful life when you're drowning. You can't create something beautiful when your hands are full of things that don't matter. You can't become who you're meant to be when you're too busy being everything to everyone else. So let this be your permission slip. You don't have to carry it all. You don't have to fix it all. You don't have to be available for it all. Some things can wait. Some things can be delegated. Some things can be ignored. And some things, if you're honest with yourself, were never yours to begin with. Stop letting life overwhelm you, not because it's easy, but because your life is too valuable to spend in survival mode. You weren't put here to just get through the day. You were put here to live it. And living begins the moment you stop managing chaos and start creating clarity. Chapter 2. Decide what actually matters. Here's a question that will make you uncomfortable. If you had to choose only 3 things to care deeply about for the rest of your life, what would they be? Not 30 things, not 10, 3. Most people freeze when confronted with this question because modern life has trained you to believe you should care about everything. Every cause, every trend, every opinion, every opportunity, every person's approval, every path you didn't take, every version of success that exists. But here's what nobody tells you. When everything matters, nothing matters deeply. And when nothing matters deeply, your life becomes a shallow collection of surface-level priorities instead of a focused pursuit of meaningful ones. You end up caring a little bit about a lot of things, but never enough about anything to actually transform your life. You spread yourself so thin that you disappear. You become a reflection of everyone else's expectations instead of an expression of your own truth. Deciding what actually matters is the most important decision you'll ever make. Not because it's dramatic, but because it determines everything else. It determines where your time goes, where your energy flows, what you say yes to, and what you finally have the courage to decline. Without that decision, you drift. And drifting is comfortable because it doesn't require clarity. It doesn't ask you to choose. It doesn't force you to commit. You can just float along, responding to whatever current pulls you, reacting to whatever opportunity appears, following whatever path seems popular. But drifting never leads to fulfillment. Drifting leads to regret. Drifting leads to waking up at 45 wondering why your life doesn't feel like yours. Fulfillment, on the other hand, begins with conscious choice, especially the choice of what truly deserves your limited, precious, irreplaceable attention, time, and energy. When you lack clarity about what matters, life becomes impossibly heavy. Everything feels urgent. Everything feels personal. Everything feels like your responsibility. Every email feels like a crisis. Every request feels mandatory. Every trend feels like something you should participate in. But when you gain clarity, when you actually decide what matters to you, complexity begins to fall away like dead leaves. Unnecessary commitments become obvious. Unimportant responsibilities lose their grip on you. Distractions reveal themselves for what they really are, not temptations, but detours taking you away from where you actually want to go. Listen carefully. You cannot optimize a life you haven't defined. You cannot simplify a life you haven't examined. You cannot prioritize a life you haven't claimed as your own. So let's start defining it. Let's start examining it. Let's start claiming it. To decide what matters, you need to ask better questions, not surface-level questions like, what do I want? But deeper questions that cut through the noise and expose what's really driving you. Questions like, what do I value more? time or status, freedom or approval, depth or variety, peace or noise, progress or appearance, connection or recognition? These aren't easy questions because they force you to choose. They force you to acknowledge that you can't have it all. They force you to admit that some things you've been chasing might not actually be what you want. They're just what you thought you should want. The answers to these questions are deeply personal, and they're often not the answers society expects from you. Society expects you to want the promotion, the bigger house, the luxury car, the impressive title, the enviable vacation, and maybe you do want those things, but maybe you don't. Maybe what you actually want is more time with your family. Maybe what you want is creative freedom. Maybe what you want is peace of mind that doesn't cost your entire life. And that's precisely why clarity is so powerful. It frees you from living someone else's story. It gives you permission to write your own. Another question that cuts through everything: if everything else disappeared tomorrow, what would make my life feel meaningful? This question is brutal in its honesty because it removes the background noise. It removes the pressure to impress. It removes the comparison trap. It removes the cultural expectations. It removes the fear of missing out. It strips away everything except what's essential. And here's what's interesting. When people answer this question honestly, the answers are almost always shockingly simple. Time with the people they love. Meaningful contribution to something larger than themselves. Personal growth that challenges them. Creative expression that fulfills them. Physical health that sustains them. Spiritual grounding that centers them. Financial security that frees them. Almost nobody says, "What would make my life meaningful is more notifications, a bigger closet, more digital distractions, more things to maintain, or more ways to compare myself to strangers online." Those things show up only when we stop thinking and start consuming. They show up when we're on autopilot, scrolling through life instead of living it. Once you identify what actually matters to you, the real work begins. Because simplicity isn't achieved by knowing what matters. It's achieved by aligning your life with what matters. Alignment is where most people get stuck. Values are easy to declare but difficult to live. You can say you value health while eating food that destroys it. You can say you value family while spending zero intentional time with them. You can say you value creativity while filling every free moment with passive consumption. Values without alignment create guilt. Guilt that you're not living up to your own standards. Guilt that whispers you're a hypocrite. Guilt that weighs you down every time you choose convenience over conviction. But values with alignment? That creates fulfillment. That creates integrity. That creates the rare feeling of being whole, of knowing your life actually reflects what you believe. The good news is that alignment doesn't require overnight transformation. It doesn't require perfection. It doesn't require quitting your job, moving to a different city, or making grand, dramatic gestures. Alignment requires small, consistent choices. One healthier meal, one deeper conversation, one clearer boundary, one intentional pause, one decision that honors what you actually value instead of what's easiest in the moment. Small alignment compounds. One aligned choice today leads to another tomorrow. Those choices stack into days. Days stack into weeks. Weeks stack into months. and months stack into a radically different life. The question isn't, can I redesign my entire life today? The question is, can I make one choice today that honors what I truly value? That's where the magic lives. In the single choice, the small alignment, the tiny course correction that shifts everything over time. But here's the uncomfortable truth that comes with deciding what matters. Priority demands sacrifice. You cannot prioritize everything. When everything is a priority, nothing is. Choosing what matters means being at peace with what doesn't. And this is where people begin to resist simplicity, because simplicity requires loss. Not financial loss, but emotional loss. The loss of the fantasy of having it all, the loss of trying to please everyone, the loss of keeping every option open, the loss of being everything to everyone, the loss of chasing every version of success that exists. True focus requires closing doors. True priority requires saying no. True simplicity requires letting go of good things to make room for great things. This feels uncomfortable at first. Your brain will resist. It will tell you you're missing out. It will tell you you're limiting yourself. It will tell you that saying no is rude or selfish or irresponsible. But on the other side of that discomfort is something extraordinary: liberation. When you decide what matters, you also decide who matters. Some relationships nourish you, others drain you. Some connections challenge you to grow, others keep you stuck in old patterns. Some people want you to succeed, others only want you available. Reducing relational complexity is one of the highest forms of self-respect. And before you worry that sounds harsh, remember, it doesn't mean abandoning people. It means no longer abandoning yourself. Ultimately, deciding what matters is an act of courage. It's easier to follow the script was handed to you by your parents, your culture, your social circle. It's easier to pursue what everyone else is pursuing. It's easier to stay busy than to sit with the discomfort of clarity. But easy doesn't lead to meaningful. Easy leads to predictable. Easy leads to average. Easy leads to regret. Meaningful begins when you choose direction over drift. When you choose clarity over comfort. When you choose alignment over applause. So pause right now, take a breath, and ask yourself, if my life was simpler, what would it be filled with? Whatever answer rises to the surface, that's your compass. That's your clarity. That's the foundation upon which the magic of a simple life is built. Because you can't simplify what you haven't defined. And you can't define what you're afraid to examine. So examine it, define it, claim it. Your life is waiting. Chapter 3. Remove what doesn't serve you. Once you've decided what truly matters, the next challenge becomes brutally clear. You have to clear out everything that stands in the way. And this is where most lives stay cluttered. Not because people don't know what they want, but because they refuse to remove what prevents them from having it. We've been taught that building a better life is about addition, adding better habits, adding new routines, adding productivity hacks, adding morning rituals, adding skills, adding connections, adding. But simplicity has always been a subtractive art. It's about removing, eliminating, cutting away, letting go, releasing your grip on things that no longer serve the person you're becoming. When you stop trying to carry everything, life becomes lighter by design, not by accident, by choice. The things that don't serve you, show up in countless forms. Some are obvious, like toxic relationships that drain your energy every time you engage with them, or time-wasting habits that steal hours without giving anything meaningful in return. Those are the easy targets. But most of what doesn't serve you is subtle. It's quieter. It hides in plain sight, like outdated beliefs you absorbed when you were younger and never questioned, like hidden expectations you didn't choose but somehow agreed to carry, like unnecessary obligations that seemed important once but now just weigh you down, like goals you're still pursuing out of habit, ego, or the fear of disappointing someone who probably isn't even watching. Life becomes complicated not because we keep seeking joy, but because we keep holding on to everything we've outgrown. We carry yesterday's dreams into today's reality and wonder why they feel so heavy. Let's start with the most tangible thing: your time. Look at where your time actually goes, not where you think it goes, but where it really goes. Track it for a week if you have to. You'll probably discover something uncomfortable. You're investing hours into activities that drain you, commitments that don't align with your values, and distractions that steal your attention without giving you anything meaningful in return. Not everything enjoyable is valuable, and not everything valuable is enjoyable. But when something consumes your life without contributing to it, it becomes a thief. And thieves must be removed. Then look at your mental environment. What beliefs are cluttering your mind? What stories are you telling yourself that no longer serve you? Maybe you're holding on to guilt about setting boundaries. Maybe you believe that being productive always has to feel stressful. Maybe you think success means doing more instead of doing what actually matters. Maybe you believe that saying no makes you selfish, that rest is laziness, that struggling is noble, that suffering builds character. Some beliefs served you once. They helped you survive a particular season of life. But they don't serve you anymore. They belong to an older version of you, a version who didn't know what you know now, who hadn't experienced what you've experienced, who hadn't grown into who you are today. Growth requires updates, and updates often begin with unlearning. There's also emotional clutter, old resentments you're still carrying, grudges you refuse to release, comparisons that poison your peace, attachments to outcomes you can't control, regrets about decisions you can't undo. Emotional clutter is the heaviest kind because it takes up space even when you're not actively thinking about it. You can go about your day pretending you're fine, functioning normally, getting things done. But the emotional load weighs you down like an invisible backpack filled with stones. Letting go isn't just poetic wisdom. It's a practical strategy for reclaiming capacity. You cannot carry both old pain and new possibility. One must be released for the other to arrive. You cannot step into your future while dragging your entire past behind you. And then, of course, there are people. Not every person you meet in life is meant to stay. Some relationships are seasonal. They're meant to teach you something, support you through something, or share a specific chapter with you. But they're not meant to be lifelong assignments. The problem happens when we try to force seasonal relationships into permanent positions. When we hold on to people who once supported us, but now limit us. People who once inspired us, but now drain us. People who once walked beside us, but now resist our growth because it threatens their comfort. This doesn't mean those people are bad. It doesn't mean you have to hate them or cut them off dramatically. It simply means recognizing that not every connection is designed to go to distance. And that's okay. Removing what doesn't serve you sometimes means redefining relationships, not with cruelty, but with clarity. It means loving people from a distance when closeness has become toxic. It means honoring what was without pretending it still is. Now here's where resistance usually kicks in. Removing what doesn't serve you can feel uncomfortable. It might feel harsh. It might feel selfish. It might feel unfamiliar, especially if you spent your whole life people-pleasing, saying yes, keeping the peace, avoiding conflict. But simplicity is not about being harsh or selfish. It's about being aligned. You were not designed to carry every responsibility that crosses your path. You were not designed to solve every problem. You were not designed to meet every expectation. You were not designed to save every person. You were not designed to be everything to everyone. You were designed to choose, and choosing requires letting go. There's another layer most people overlook: removing opportunities. We live in a culture that worships opportunity. People say, never say no to opportunity. You never know where it might lead. Keep every door open. Say yes to everything. But the truth, too many opportunities are just distractions disguised as progress. Not every open door leads somewhere worth going. Not every invitation is a blessing. Not every chance is actually a chance to move forward. Sometimes opportunities are just detours. Sometimes they're tests to see if you're committed to your direction. Sometimes they're shiny distractions designed to pull you off course. One of the most mature forms of wisdom is learning to say no to good things so you can say yes to great things. It's stopping the chase of everything that glitters and starting the selection of only what aligns with your direction. Every time you remove something that doesn't serve you, you create space. And space is a powerful asset. Space gives you room to think, room to breathe, room to redirect your energy into what actually matters. Space gives your values actual territory to exist in. Without space, even good things suffocate. With space, even a few meaningful things can flourish. This removal process doesn't need to happen overnight. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't require burning bridges or making grand declarations. It simply needs to be honest. You don't remove things because you dislike them. You remove them because they don't support the life you're trying to build. There's a difference. A hobby you loved 5 years ago might not serve who you're becoming now. That's not failure. That's evolution. A friendship that once energized you might now feel exhausting. That's not betrayal. That's growth. A goal you set when you were younger might no longer align with your values. That's not quitting. That's clarity. Removing what doesn't serve you is not about judgment. It's about discernment. It's about recognizing that your capacity is limited, your time is finite, and your energy is precious. It's about understanding that every yes to something that doesn't serve you is an automatic no to something that does. At some point, you realize that a simpler life isn't created by adding more systems, more tools, more strategies, more effort. It's created by removing the unnecessary. It's created by releasing what once felt important, but now feels heavy. It's created by embracing the courage to walk away from what no longer aligns with your truth. Removing what doesn't serve you is not the end of freedom. It is the beginning of it. Chapter 4. Keep fewer, choose better. A simple life isn't defined by having nothing. It's defined by having exactly what you need and nothing you don't. When you keep fewer things but choose better, you stop drowning in the noise of excess and start thriving in the richness of quality. Most people don't suffer from a lack of options. They suffer from an overload of them. Too many choices in the grocery store, too many apps on their phone, too many projects half-started, too many goals competing for attention, too many social circles to maintain, too many opinions to consider, too many voices telling them what to do. And yet, very few of these choices contribute meaningfully to their peace, their growth, or their fulfillment. They just create noise, decision fatigue, mental clutter, the exhausting feeling that you're always choosing but never satisfied. Quality is a function of selection. When you choose better, you don't need more. You don't need 5 mediocre friendships when 2 deeply aligned ones give you more support, more understanding, more laughter, and more meaning. You don't need a closet bursting with clothes you never wear when a handful of well-chosen pieces make you feel confident every single day. You don't need 20 competing goals when 3 well-chosen ones will actually transform your life. The paradox is beautifully simple. When you raise your standards, your demand for quantity naturally decreases. But to choose better, you have to know what better means to you. And here's the thing. Better doesn't mean more expensive. It doesn't mean more luxurious. It doesn't mean more impressive to other people. Better means more aligned with your values, more aligned with your priorities, more aligned with who you actually are, not who you think you should be, more aligned with the life you're building, not the life you're performing. Better means things that add to your days instead of cluttering them. Better means things that move you forward instead of holding you in place. Better means things that serve you instead of things that own you. Choosing better also means choosing deliberately. And most people don't choose deliberately. They choose reactively. They buy because it's on sale, not because they need it. They say yes because they feel obligated, not because they want to. They commit because it looks impressive, not because it aligns. They collect responsibilities because everyone else seems to be doing the same thing. But deliberate choosing means pausing before you acquire or commit. It means asking questions that most people skip. Why do I want this? Do I actually need this? Will I use this? Does this align with what matters to me? Will this make my life simpler or more complicated? Even pauses long enough to ask these questions will change what you allow into your life. The same principle applies beyond possessions. It applies to how you spend your time. Not every activity deserves space on your calendar. Many people fill their days with filler, things that make them feel busy but don't make their lives richer. They confuse motion with progress. They confuse activity with accomplishment. Choosing better means building days filled with high-value activities. Deep work instead of shallow busyness. Real conversation instead of surface-level chatter. Learning instead of mindless scrolling. Experiences that create memories instead of consumption that creates emptiness. Rest that restores instead of burnout disguised as hustle. Relationships also benefit massively from the fewer but better approach. Social quantity is easily overestimated. We're conditioned to believe that more friends equals a more fulfilling life, more connections, more networking, more followers, more contacts in our phone. But fulfillment doesn't come from being widely known. It comes from being deeply understood. When you invest in fewer relationships, you create depth. You create trust. You create shared history. You create the kind of connection where you don't have to explain yourself because the other person already knows your heart. Shallow connections drain energy because they require performance. You have to show up as a version of yourself that's acceptable, impressive, entertaining. Deep connections replenish energy because they allow authenticity. You can show up as you are, messy and real and imperfect, and still be loved. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Access should be earned, and it should be rare. When you choose better goals, something powerful happens. You stop competing with other people and start building your own life. Many people chase goals that don't actually belong to them. Goals inherited from their parents, goals borrowed from culture, goals driven by ego, goals designed to impress people who aren't even paying attention. They work hard for achievements they don't genuinely care about. And then when they finally reach those goals, they feel strangely empty, confused, disappointed, because the achievement didn't deliver what they thought it would. Better goals are not based on appearances. They're based on alignment. They energize you instead of draining you. They transform you instead of just decorating your resume. They reward you with meaning instead of applause. Choosing better also affects your physical environment. A cluttered environment creates a cluttered mind. It's not poetic, it's neurological. Every object in your space takes a small amount of attention. Every unfinished project creates a mental bookmark. Every unnecessary possession occupies space that could be used for something more meaningful or for nothing at all, which is sometimes even more valuable. Space itself is not emptiness. Space is potential. Space is freedom. Space is breathing room for your mind. When you own fewer things, the things you own become easier to appreciate, easier to maintain, and easier to enjoy. You're not constantly managing your stuff. You're actually using it. But here's the deeper truth. Choosing better is a continuous practice, not a one-time decision. Your needs evolve, your tastes change, your priorities shift. What was better for you 3 years ago might not be better for you now. And that's okay. That's called growth. A simple life stays simple because it gets recalibrated regularly. When life starts to feel heavy again, it's often a sign that your calibration is overdue. It's time to look around and ask, what am I keeping that no longer serves me? What commitments have I outgrown? What goals am I chasing out of habit instead of desire? Choosing better also demands patience, and patience is rare in a world obsessed with speed. Quality rarely appears quickly. Deep relationships take years to build. Skill mastery takes time and repetition. Meaningful goals require sustained effort. Acting slowly in a culture that worships instant gratification feels rebellious. But it's the most liberating kind of rebellion. When you choose better, you're no longer impressed by how fast you acquire things. You're impressed by how deeply you experience them. You're no longer keeping score with people who are running a different race. You're building something that actually matters to you. Ultimately, keeping fewer and choosing better is an act of self-respect. It's a declaration that says, my life is too valuable to fill with things that don't matter. I am allowed to be selective. I would rather have a life that is deep, meaningful, and aligned than one that is crowded, busy, and hollow. And in a world that constantly urges you to accumulate endlessly, that kind of selectiveness isn't just powerful, it's revolutionary. Chapter 5. Break free from the pressure to accumulate. We live in a culture that measures your worth by what you can stack on top of your life. More possessions, more achievements, more upgrades, more experiences, more status symbols, more followers, more square footage, more credentials, more everything. The pressure is relentless. It shows up in advertising that tells you you're incomplete without the next purchase. It shows up in social media that makes you compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. It shows up in family expectations that demand you reach certain milestones by certain ages. It even shows up in the goals you set for yourself without questioning why you want them. This pressure to accumulate isn't just about owning more things. It's about proving something. Proving you're successful. Proving you're relevant. Proving you're capable. Proving you're worthy. Proving you matter. But the moment you tie your value to accumulation, you set yourself up for a life of endless chasing. Because accumulation has no finish line. There's always another level. A bigger house, a newer car, a better title, a more impressive achievement, a shinier trophy. The problem isn't aspiration. Aspiration is healthy. Aspiration gives you direction. The problem is the inability to feel complete without the next acquisition. When you can't feel satisfied unless you have more, you lose the ability to enjoy what you currently have. Satisfaction gets postponed indefinitely. Gratitude gets muted. Presence gets replaced by anticipation. You're always looking ahead to the next thing, never appreciating where you are right now. To break free from this pressure, you first have to understand where it comes from. A large part is cultural conditioning. You were born into a world where accumulation is praised and simplicity is misunderstood. From childhood, the message was consistent. More means better. Children get rewarded with toys. Teenagers get rewarded with gadgets. Adults get rewarded with upgrades, promotions, bonuses, bigger everything. You weren't taught to curate, to choose intentionally, or to question what you bring into your life. You were taught to get, to keep, and to display. Another part comes from comparison. We don't accumulate in isolation. We accumulate in relation to others. If everyone around you seemed content with less, accumulation wouldn't feel necessary. But when everyone is displaying their latest acquisition, their exotic vacation, their career milestone, their perfectly curated life, it creates an artificial benchmark. You don't compare yourself to reality. You compare yourself to presentation. And presentation always looks better than reality because it's edited, filtered, and carefully selected. So you chase, not for joy, but for parity. Not because you want it, but because you don't want to fall behind. Then there's the emotional layer. Many people accumulate to soothe discomfort, shopping to feel better after a bad day, upgrading to feel relevant when you're feeling insecure, buying to feel accomplished when you're feeling stuck, accumulating to fill an emotional void that has nothing to do with what's missing from your closet. But emotional accumulation is never truly satisfying because it tries to solve internal problems with external solutions. You can fill your home, your garage, your storage unit, but if you never fill the internal gaps, the emptiness returns quickly often within hours of the purchase. Fulfillment doesn't come from accumulation. It comes from alignment, from living in harmony with what you actually value instead of what you think you should value. Breaking free doesn't mean rejecting possessions or abandoning ambition. It means rejecting dependency on accumulation for identity. It means shifting from acquiring to curating. It means asking, what adds genuine value to my life? Instead of, what do other people expect from me? It means choosing based on who you are, not who you're trying to impress, not who you're competing with, not who you're afraid of disappointing. One of the most liberating realizations you can have is this: you don't need to own everything you admire. You can appreciate beautiful things without acquiring them. You can enjoy experiences without documenting them for social approval. You can celebrate other people's success without feeling deficient in your own. You can witness someone else's abundance without feeling scarcity in yours. When admiration replaces acquisition, life becomes exponentially lighter. You also begin to realize that accumulation isn't just physical, it's mental. People accumulate unfinished projects, unmade decisions, unprocessed emotions, unfiltered information streaming into their consciousness 24/7. These invisible forms of accumulation create even more stress than material possessions. You might declutter your home and still feel overwhelmed because the mental clutter remains untouched. The notifications keep coming. The obligations keep stacking. The information keeps flooding in. Breaking free means decluttering both the physical and the psychological. It means putting boundaries around what you allow into your mind, not just what you allow into your home. Another overlooked truth: accumulation steals time. Everything you acquire must be managed, cleaned, organized, maintained, repaired, upgraded, stored, insured, eventually replaced. Owning more doesn't just cost money, it costs time. And time is the one currency you can never earn back. When you accumulate without intention, you trade hours of your life for things that often don't contribute to your happiness, your growth, or your peace. You work longer to afford things you don't need. You stress more to maintain things you don't use. You sacrifice freedom for stuff. There is a different way to live, and it begins with redefining success. Success is not how much you can stack on top of your life. Success is how much meaning remains once you remove what never mattered. Wealth isn't just the ability to buy. It's the ability to walk away. It's the ability to say no to a good deal because it doesn't align. It's the ability to resist the sale, the upgrade, the new release. Freedom isn't the privilege of owning more. It's the privilege of needing less. The privilege of not being owned by your possessions. The privilege of mobility, flexibility, simplicity, and confidence. Confidence isn't built by impressing others with what you own. It's built by no longer needing to impress anyone. It's built by knowing your worth isn't tied to your net worth. When you break free from the pressure to accumulate, you reclaim choice. You stop buying out of impulse, boredom, insecurity, or comparison. You stop upgrading because it's expected. You stop pursuing goals that don't belong to you. Instead, you live from intention. You own what serves you. You pursue what fulfills you. You invest in what grows you. You acquire what aligns with the life you genuinely want, not the life you're told to want by advertisements, influencers, or cultural scripts. And for the first time, you begin to feel something rare in modern life: enoughness. Enoughness is not stagnation. It's not complacency. It's not settling. Enoughness is arrival. It's the moment you stop chasing external validation and start living from internal contentment. It's the moment you realize you already have what you need to be happy. You already have what you need to feel whole. You already have what you need to build a meaningful life. Enoughness doesn't mean you stop growing or dreaming or creating. It means you stop believing that your worth is incomplete until you acquire the next thing. And once you experience enoughness, accumulation loses its power over you, because you no longer need more to feel like you are enough. You already are. Chapter 6. Learn to ignore the unimportant. Your attention is one of the most valuable resources you possess, and yet it's one of the easiest things to lose control of. Every single day you're surrounded by an endless flood of inputs, notifications, opinions, requests, trends, arguments, expectations, news, temptations, emergencies that aren't really emergencies. Not all of these things are harmful, but most of them are unimportant. And the unimportant is more dangerous than the harmful because it sneaks into your life quietly without raising alarms. Harmful things are loud. They announce themselves. You can spot them and defend against them. But unimportant things are subtle. They disguise themselves as necessary. They blend into the background. They don't destroy you outright. They distract you slowly, steadily, until you can't remember what you were supposed to be focusing on in the first place. When you fail to ignore the unimportant, you pay for it in mental fragmentation. Your attention gets divided into tiny, scattered pieces until no single task gets the full strength of your mind. You check your phone while eating, while working, while resting, while walking, while having a conversation with someone you claim to care about. You consume information you don't need. You engage in debates that don't matter. You react to situations that have nothing to do with your goals, your values, or your future. And the worst part? You often don't even question it. It just feels normal. Everyone else is doing it. Everyone else is distracted. Everyone else is scattered. So you assume it's just how life works now. But it's not. Learning to ignore the unimportant is not about becoming cold, indifferent, or careless. It's about becoming selective. Selective with your time. Selective with your responses. Selective with your emotional energy. Selective with what you allow to occupy your mind. The world will always present you with more than you can handle. Your job is not to handle everything. Your job is to decide what deserves handling and let everything else fall away. The skill of ignoring is not laziness. It's intelligence. It's the intelligence to focus on what truly moves your life forward and release everything else without guilt. Most people treat their attention as if it were infinite. They assume they can afford to care about everything, every headline, every controversy, every opinion, every update, every piece of breaking news. But attention is limited. You only get so much per day, and once it's spent, it's gone. If you use it on gossip, distractions, arguments, comparisons, and random stimulation, don't be surprised when you have nothing left for creativity, problem solving, deep work, meaningful relationships, or personal growth. Focus requires capacity, and capacity requires guarding your attention like it's the most valuable thing you own, because it is. A good place to begin is by asking a simple question whenever something demands your involvement. is this mine? Not every problem is your problem. Not every conversation is your conversation. Not every fight is your fight. Not every crisis is your crisis. Not every piece of news requires your emotional reaction. We have a tendency to inherit the stress of others, the expectations of others, the urgency of others. But when you say yes to things that don't belong to you, you automatically say no to things that do. Another helpful question: does this change anything important? Many things that feel urgent are actually irrelevant. You could spend hours defending an opinion to a stranger online who will never change their mind. You could consume news that won't change your next decision. You could keep up with trends that will be forgotten by next month. You could scroll through updates that have zero impact on your actual life. Modern society rewards reaction, not reflection. It rewards engagement, not discernment. It rewards outrage, not thoughtfulness. But your life doesn't improve through reaction. Your life improves through reflection. Ignoring the unimportant also applies to emotions. Not every emotion deserves a response. Not every impulse deserves action. Not every thought deserves attention. You can feel something without chasing it. You can notice something without participating in it. You can observe a thought without believing it. You can experience an emotion without letting it control your behavior. Emotional discipline is a form of mental minimalism. It allows you to conserve energy for what actually matters, for decisions that shape your future instead of impulses that last 5 minutes. On a practical level, ignoring the unimportant might look like turning off notifications that don't serve you, refusing to check the news every hour, unfollowing accounts that trigger comparison or anxiety, reducing digital noise, avoiding conversations that drain you without contributing anything meaningful. But the real shift is internal. It's the moment you no longer feel compelled to respond to everything, to fix everything, to prove everything, to have an opinion on everything, to be everywhere at once. Silence becomes a choice. Non-reaction becomes a strategy. And peace becomes a natural result. We often assume that successful, fulfilled people are the ones who do more. But look closely, and you'll notice something interesting. High performers, deep thinkers, people who seem genuinely at peace, they're not defined by how much they do. They're defined by how much they ignore. They ignore distractions. They ignore noise. They ignore irrelevant opinions. They ignore drama. They ignore comparisons. They ignore trends that don't align with their direction. They ignore everything that pulls them away from their purpose. Learning to ignore is a form of strength, not avoidance. Avoidance is fear-driven. Ignoring is clarity-driven. Avoidance runs away from responsibility. Ignoring refuses to waste energy on what doesn't matter. One keeps you small and stuck. The other keeps you focused and free. And here's the most liberating part. Ignoring the unimportant is not rude. What's rude is expecting someone to sacrifice their peace, their focus, their life for trivialities. What's rude is demanding someone's attention without considering its value. What's rude is thinking that you owe your mental space to anyone who asks for it. You don't. You owe your attention to your values, your goals, your health, your relationships with people who genuinely matter, your peace, your purpose, your growth. Everything else is negotiable. Everything else is optional. Everything else can be ignored without guilt. When you master the art of ignoring, life becomes quieter. Not because the world changes, but because you stop letting everything into your inner world. You stop absorbing every opinion. You stop reacting to every provocation. You stop engaging with every distraction. You stop feeling obligated to participate in every trend, every debate, every update. And in that quiet, you gain something incredibly rare in modern life: the ability to hear yourself again, the ability to think your own thoughts, to feel your own feelings, to follow your own direction, to build your own life instead of reacting to everyone else's. Ignoring the unimportant is not detachment. It's discernment. It's the wisdom to know the difference between what deserves your energy and what deserves to be released. And once you develop that wisdom, simplicity stops being something you force and starts being something you naturally live. Chapter 7. Treat time as your wealth money gets all the attention. People obsess over it, chase it, count it, protect it, invest it. Measure their success by how much of it they accumulate. But if you look closer, the most valuable currency you have never sits in your bank account. It sits on your calendar. Time is the one resource you can never earn back once it's spent. You can lose money and make it again. You can lose possessions and replace them. You can lose opportunities and find new ones. But when you lose time, it's gone forever, irretrievable, unrepeatable, final. And yet, strangely, time is the currency people protect the least. Many people live as if time is abundant and money is scarce. They guard their wallet, but give away their hours freely. They negotiate fiercely over price, but not over their schedule. They get frustrated when they're overcharged financially, but not when they're overbooked personally. They measure the cost of things in dollars, but rarely in days, in months, in years of their life. But a meaningful life is built by measuring cost in time, not money. If something consumes a year of your life, it's expensive, regardless of the price tag. If something drains your energy for 6 months, it's costly, even if it's free. When you treat time as your wealth, you begin to ask different questions, better questions, questions that change everything. Instead of asking, "How much does this cost?" you ask, "How much of my life will this require?" Instead of asking, "Can I afford this financially?" you ask, "Can I afford this energetically, emotionally, mentally?" Instead of asking, "Is this a good deal?" you ask, "Is this a wise investment of my limited time on earth?" That mental shift alone, asking better questions, will simplify your life more than any organizing system, productivity hack, or decluttering method ever could. Time wealth is about allocation. How you allocate your hours reveals what you truly value, even when your words say otherwise. If you say you value health, but spend no time on movement, rest, or nourishment, the truth is in your schedule. If you say you value relationships, but spend no intentional time with the people you claim to love, the truth is in your schedule. If you say you value growth, but spend no time learning, practicing, reflecting, the truth is in your schedule. Schedules don't lie. They expose priorities. They reveal what you actually care about versus what you claim to care about. But here's the good news. Priorities can be redesigned. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. Even a small reallocation of time compounds into meaningful change. 10 minutes of reading every day becomes 60 hours a year. 20 minutes of exercise becomes 120 hours of movement annually. 15 minutes of focused creative work every morning becomes 90 hours of creation. Small commitments become large results when compounded through time wealth. Tiny investments yield enormous returns when you're patient enough to let them accumulate. There's another layer to treating time as wealth: protecting it. Time needs boundaries just like money does. People will ask for your time the way children ask for candy without any awareness of cost or consequence, not out of malice, but out of habit, out of assumption, out of expectation. And if you're not careful, your calendar will fill up with other people's priorities, requests, invitations, favors, meetings, obligations, small things that seem harmless in isolation but collectively steal your life. Protecting time doesn't always require saying no harshly. Sometimes it requires saying no clearly. Sometimes it requires saying no early, before the request escalates into an expectation. Sometimes it requires saying no silently, by never making yourself always available. Availability is not a virtue when it becomes self-sacrifice. A life without boundaries is a life lived for everyone except yourself. The opposite of protecting time is wasting it. Time can be wasted in obvious ways: mindless scrolling, binge-watching shows you don't even enjoy, addictions, procrastination disguised as rest. But the most dangerous time wasters are disguised as productivity. If you're not careful, you can spend your days doing things that look productive, but don't move you closer to anything that matters. Busy work that fills time without creating value. Meetings that could have been emails. Tasks that create motion, but not progress. Busyness is not effectiveness. Activity is not accomplishment. Time wealth requires the wisdom to distinguish motion from movement. Another dimension of time wealth is presence. You can spend time physically while being absent mentally. You can be at dinner while thinking about work. You can be with your family while thinking about your phone. You can be on vacation while mentally still sitting at your desk. Presence is not just being there. It's being here, fully, completely, this moment, this conversation, this experience, this breath. Presence multiplies time. It takes ordinary hours and turns them into memories, into meaning, into connection. Skimming through life might give you more experiences, but presence gives you richer ones. There's also the future dimension. Time wealth considers the compounding effect of how you invest your hours today. Skills compound, knowledge compounds, relationships compound, health compounds, habits compound. If you invest time into things that compound, your future self becomes wealthy in ways money cannot purchase. If you waste time on things that decay, things that don't build, things that don't last, your future self becomes poorer, no matter how much money you accumulate. The question is not just, what am I doing today? The question is, what will this become over time? And finally, treating time as wealth changes how you define success. Success stops being measured by how much you have and starts being measured by how much of your life is truly yours. A person with less money but more time freedom is often wealthier than someone with more money but no control over their schedule. A person who owns their calendar is richer than someone whose calendar owns them. The dream is not to be financially rich while being bankrupt in time. The dream is alignment, where your time funds the life you actually want to live, where your days reflect your values, where your schedule serves your purpose instead of betraying it. When you begin treating time as your wealth, something profound happens. Life slows down, simplifies, opens up. You become intentional rather than reactive. You become present rather than distracted. You become directed rather than scattered. You become protective of your hours because you finally understand what they're worth. And the life you build begins to reflect not what the world pressures you to accumulate, but what you consciously choose to become. Time is your wealth. Spend it wisely, invest it carefully, protect it fiercely, because unlike money, you can't earn it back. Chapter 8. Living the Simple Life, the Daily Practice. Understanding simplicity is one thing. Living it is another. You can read every word about minimalism, intentionality, and presence. But if you don't translate that knowledge into daily practice, it remains theory. Beautiful theory, but theory nonetheless. Living a simple life isn't about one grand transformation. It's not about selling everything you own, moving to a cabin in the woods, or quitting your job to pursue some romanticized version of freedom. Those are dramatic narratives that make great stories but terrible strategies for most people. Living a simple life is about small, consistent choices that compound over time. It's about daily practices that keep you aligned. It's about building systems that protect your clarity when life gets chaotic. It's about creating a rhythm that supports who you want to become instead of who the world demands you to be. Let's talk about what that actually looks like. Morning clarity. How you begin your day determines the quality of everything that follows. Most people hand their attention to the world the moment they wake up. Phone, news, email, social media, notifications. They start the day in reaction mode, and they never escape it. A simple life begins with a different morning, one where you own the first hour instead of giving it away. This doesn't mean waking up at 4 a.m. or following some influencer's morning routine. It means creating space before the noise arrives. Maybe it's 10 minutes of silence with coffee. Maybe it's journaling 3 things you're grateful for. Maybe it's a walk outside before your brain gets cluttered. Maybe it's stretching, breathing, thinking. The specifics don't matter. What matters is claiming time for yourself before the world claims you. That space creates clarity, and clarity creates better decisions all day long. The practice of subtraction. Living simply means constantly asking, what can I remove? Not just once during a decluttering weekend, but regularly, weekly, monthly. What commitments are draining me? What subscriptions am I not using? What digital clutter is weighing me down? What relationships feel more like obligations than connections? What goals am I chasing out of habit instead of desire? Subtraction is not a one-time event. It's a continuous practice, because life has a way of accumulating again if you're not intentional. Clutter creeps back in. Commitments pile up. Distractions multiply. Living simply means staying vigilant, not obsessively, but consciously. It means checking in with yourself and asking, is this still serving me? Does this still align with who I'm becoming? Boundaries as a form of love. You cannot live a simple life without boundaries. Boundaries around your time, your energy, your attention, your space, your peace. Boundaries are not walls. They're not about shutting people out or becoming isolated. Boundaries are about protecting what matters most so you can show up fully for what deserves your presence. A boundary might look like turning off notifications after 8 p.m. It might look like saying no to events that don't align with your values. It might look like limiting time with people who drain you. It might look like refusing to engage in conversations that lead nowhere. Boundaries feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent your life people-pleasing. But discomfort is temporary. Resentment from lack of boundaries lasts much longer. Setting boundaries is not selfish. It's self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of a life that feels genuinely yours. Deep work over shallow busyness. Living simply means rejecting the culture of busyness and embracing the power of deep work. Deep work is focused, undistracted, intentional effort on something that matters. Most people spend their days doing shallow work. Checking email, attending meetings that could have been messages, scrolling, multitasking. Switching between tasks so often that nothing gets their full attention. Shallow work makes you feel busy, but rarely makes you feel accomplished. Deep work, on the other hand, produces results that actually move your life forward. Protecting time for deep work is a form of simplicity. It means batching similar tasks. It means turning off distractions. It means working in focused blocks instead of scattered fragments. It means doing one thing at a time instead of 10 things poorly. When you prioritize deep work, you accomplish more in less time, and that gives you more time to actually live instead of constantly catching up. Intentional consumption. You are what you consume, not just food, but information, media, content, conversations, energy from other people. Living simply means becoming intentional about what you allow into your mind. It means curating your media diet the way you'd curate your food diet. If you consume outrage, anxiety, comparison, and negativity all day, don't be surprised when you feel outraged, anxious, insecure, and negative. If you consume inspiration, wisdom, beauty, and truth, your internal world reflects that instead. This doesn't mean avoiding reality or living in a bubble. It means recognizing that you have limited mental bandwidth and you get to choose what fills it. Unfollow accounts that make you feel less than. Stop watching news that makes you anxious without making you informed. Reduce consumption of content that entertains but doesn't enrich. Choose books over scrolling. Choose conversations over content. Choose creation over consumption. You are the gatekeeper of your mind. Guard it carefully. Presence as a superpower. One of the most radical acts of simplicity is being fully present. Present in conversations. Present in meals. Present in moments that seem ordinary but are actually irreplaceable. Presence is rare because distraction is everywhere. Your phone buzzes. Your mind wanders. Your thoughts drift to the past or the future. You're physically here, but mentally somewhere else. But presence is where life actually happens. Memories are made in presence. Connection happens in presence. Joy is felt in presence. Meaning is found in presence. Practicing presence doesn't require meditation retreats or spiritual awakening. It requires noticing when you've drifted and choosing to come back. Again and again. It's a muscle you strengthen through repetition. Put the phone away during dinner. Listen without planning your response. Notice the details. Feel the moment. Be here fully, even if just for a few seconds longer than usual. Over time, those seconds add up, and life becomes richer not because you added more, but because you experienced more of what was already there. Rest without guilt. Living simply means unlearning the lie that rest is laziness. Rest is not the opposite of productivity. Rest is what makes productivity sustainable. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot think clearly with an exhausted mind. You cannot show up fully when you're running on fumes. Rest is not a reward for working hard enough. Rest is a requirement for being human. It's how your body heals, how your mind processes, how creativity emerges, how clarity returns. Give yourself permission to rest without earning it. Take the nap. Take the walk. Take the day off. Sit in silence. Do nothing and feel no guilt about it. The world will tell you that rest is wasted time. The world is wrong. Rest is an investment in every hour that follows. Relationships over networks. Living simply means prioritizing deep relationships over wide networks. It means investing in the few people who truly matter instead of trying to maintain hundreds of shallow connections. Quality over quantity applies to relationships more than anything else. You don't need a massive social circle to feel fulfilled. You need a few people who see you, understand you, challenge you, and support you. Spend time with those people. Real time. Undistracted time. Time where you're not performing or impressing, but simply being. Those relationships are worth more than 1,000 followers, more than a crowded contact list, more than any networking event. Let go of relationships that feel like obligations, not with cruelty, but with honesty. Some people were meant for a season, and that's okay. Honoring what was doesn't mean pretending it still is. Protect your energy for relationships that fill you up instead of drain you dry. Systems that support you. Living simply means building systems that remove friction from your life. Systems for finances, for health, for work, for household tasks, for decision-making. A system is just a repeatable process that makes things easier. Automating bill payments is a system. Meal prepping on Sundays is a system. Having a weekly planning session is a system. A morning routine is a system. Systems reduce the number of decisions you have to make. They remove the need for motivation. They create consistency without requiring willpower. The simpler your systems, the more likely you are to maintain them. Don't overcomplicate. Don't try to optimize everything. Just create simple structures that keep life running smoothly so your brain is free for things that actually matter. Saying no. As a spiritual practice, living simply requires becoming comfortable with the word no. No to invitations that don't align. No to opportunities that distract. No to requests that drain. No to expectations that don't serve you. Every no is a yes to something else. When you say no to clutter, you say yes to clarity. When you say no to busyness, you say yes to presence. When you say no to shallow, you say yes to deep. No is not rude. No is honest. No is protective. No is powerful. Practice saying it without over-explaining, without apologizing, without feeling guilty. A simple, clear no is a complete sentence. Gratitude as a daily reset. Living simply means practicing gratitude not as a platitude, but as a daily reset. Gratitude shifts your focus from what's missing to what's present, from what you're chasing to what you already have. It's easy to fall into the trap of always wanting more. More success, more money, more recognition, more experiences. Gratitude interrupts that pattern. Every day, name 3 things you're grateful for, not abstractly, but specifically. Not my family, but the way my partner laughed at breakfast. Not my health, but the fact that I could walk outside today without pain. Gratitude doesn't make you complacent. It makes you content. And contentment is the soil where simplicity grows. The long game living simply is not a sprint. It's not a 30-day challenge or a New Year's resolution. It's a long game. A lifelong practice of choosing alignment over accumulation, presence over performance, depth over distraction. Some days you'll nail it. Other days you'll slip. You'll overcommit. You'll overconsume. You'll lose focus. You'll say yes when you meant no. You'll get distracted. You'll forget. And that's okay. Simplicity is not perfection. It's direction. It's the commitment to keep coming back, to keep realigning, to keep choosing what matters even when it's hard. Progress isn't linear, but every time you choose simplicity, even in a small way, you're reinforcing the life you want to live. You're building the person you want to become. Living the simple life is not about arriving at some destination where everything is perfect and peaceful forever. It's about showing up daily to protect what matters, to release what doesn't, to choose intentionally, to live fully. It's about building a life that feels light enough to carry and rich enough to cherish. And that life? It's not someday. It's not when you finally have enough money, enough time, enough clarity. It's today, right now, in this moment, in the next choice you make. The simple life is waiting, not somewhere out there, but here, in your hands, in your decisions, in your daily practice. Live it. The promise of simplicity. We've covered a lot of ground together, from understanding why life feels overwhelming to learning how to protect your time like the wealth it is. From deciding what truly matters to building daily practices that keep you aligned, from breaking free from accumulation to mastering the art of saying no. But now comes the most important part: what you do next. Because knowledge without action is just entertainment. Understanding without implementation is just theory. You can know everything about simplicity and still live a cluttered, chaotic, overwhelming life if you don't actually choose differently. So let's talk about what happens when you do choose differently, when you actually commit to this path, when you stop reading about simplicity and start living it. The promise of simplicity has always been the same, across cultures, across centuries, across every philosophy that has ever touched this truth. When you remove what doesn't matter, what does matter finally has room to breathe. Simplicity promises you clarity in a world designed to confuse you. It promises you peace in a culture that profits from your anxiety. It promises you freedom in a system that wants you dependent on more. But here's what simplicity doesn't promise. It doesn't promise that life will suddenly become easy. It doesn't promise that all your problems will disappear. It doesn't promise that you'll never struggle, never doubt, never feel uncomfortable again. Simplicity is not a magic pill. It's a practice, a discipline, a daily choice to live differently in a world that constantly pulls you toward complexity. What simplicity does promise is this: when you commit to it, when you actually live it, your life becomes unmistakably yours. Your days start to reflect your values instead of other people's expectations. Your choices come from intention instead of obligation. Your energy flows toward what fulfills you instead of what depletes you. Your mind quiets, your shoulders relax, your breath deepens. You stop feeling like you're drowning and start feeling like you're finally swimming in the direction you actually want to go. The shift. Something shifts when you embrace simplicity. It's subtle at first. You might not even notice it immediately, but over time, the shift becomes undeniable. You stop needing external validation to feel worthy. You stop comparing your life to everyone else's highlight reel. You stop chasing goals that never belonged to you in the first place. You start trusting yourself more, You start listening to your inner voice instead of the thousand outer voices screaming for your attention. You start making decisions faster because you're clear on what matters. Life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes lighter, clearer, more spacious, more intentional. You realize that you were never supposed to carry everything. You were never supposed to be everything to everyone. You were never supposed to accumulate endlessly, perform constantly, prove continuously. You were supposed to choose, to curate, to protect, to align, to live. And when you finally give yourself permission to do that, everything changes. The resistance. But let's be honest, choosing simplicity in a complex world is not always easy. There will be resistance from the world, from other people, and especially from yourself. The world will keep telling you that more is better, that busy means important, that accumulation equals success, that saying no makes you selfish, that rest is laziness, that simplicity is deprivation. Other people will question your choices. Why are you turning down that opportunity? Why aren't you upgrading? Why are you saying no to things they think you should say yes to? Why does your life look different from theirs? Some people won't understand. Some will judge. Some will feel threatened by your choices because your choices highlight the ones they're avoiding. And that's okay. You're not living for their approval. You're living for your alignment. The hardest resistance, though, will come from within, from the part of you that's afraid of missing out, afraid of falling behind, afraid of not being enough, afraid of disappointing people, afraid of choosing wrong. That fear is normal. That resistance is human. But it's also the threshold you have to cross to get to the life you actually want. On one side of that threshold is the familiar chaos, the overwhelm, the scattered energy, the performance, the accumulation, the exhaustion disguised as ambition. On the other side is simplicity, clarity, presence, alignment, peace, freedom. You can't have both. You have to choose. The daily choice. Here's the truth about simplicity. It's not a destination you arrive at and stay forever. It's a direction you choose daily. Some days, choosing simplicity will feel natural, easy, obvious. Other days, it will feel like swimming upstream against the current of everything the world is telling you to do. On those hard days, you'll be tempted to slip back into old patterns, to say yes when you mean no, to accumulate when you meant to subtract, to distract when you meant to focus, to perform when you meant to rest. And sometimes you will slip, you'll overcommit, you'll lose focus, you'll fall back into chaos. That's not failure, that's being human. The practice of simplicity is not about perfection, it's about returning. It's about noticing when you've drifted and gently, compassionately bringing yourself back to clarity, back to intention, back to what matters, back to yourself. Every time you return, you strengthen the practice. Every time you choose simplicity, even in a small way, you reinforce the life you're building. This is not a one-time transformation. This is a lifelong practice, and that's what makes it powerful. The invitation. So here's my invitation to you. Start small. Start today. Start with one thing. Choose one area of your life that feels heavy and ask, what can I remove? What can I simplify? What can I release? Maybe it's unsubscribing from emails that clutter your inbox. Maybe it's declining an invitation that doesn't align. Maybe it's deleting an app that steals your attention. Maybe it's letting go of a goal you're chasing out of obligation. Maybe it's having an honest conversation about a relationship that's no longer working. One thing, that's all. Just one choice in the direction of simplicity. Then tomorrow, make another choice. And the day after, another. Small choices. Consistent choices. Aligned choices. Those choices compound. They stack. They build momentum. And over time, they transform your entire life. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. You don't need to quit your job, sell your house, or make dramatic gestures. You just need to start choosing differently. One choice at a time, one day at a time, one step at a time. The truth, you already know. Deep down, you already know this is true. You already know that accumulation hasn't made you happier. You already know that busyness hasn't made you more fulfilled. You already know that chasing more hasn't brought you peace. You've felt the weight of complexity. You've experienced the exhaustion of trying to be everything to everyone. You've lived the scattered, reactive, overwhelming version of life. And somewhere inside you, there's a voice that whispers, there has to be another way. That voice is right. There is another way. And it's not complicated. It's not expensive. It's not reserved for people with more time, more money, more freedom than you have. It's simpler than you think. Literally. The other way is simplicity, subtraction, alignment, presence, intentionality, choosing what matters and releasing what doesn't. That's it. That's the entire secret. Less really is more. Not because less is inherently virtuous, but because less creates space. And in that space, life happens. Real life. Meaningful life. Your life. The magic. The magic of a simple life is not that it's perfect. The magic is that it's yours. It's a life where your time reflects your values, where your choices come from clarity, where your days feel intentional instead of accidental, where you're no longer drowning in everything around you, but guided by what truly matters within you. It's a life where you wake up with energy instead of dread, where you go to bed with peace instead of guilt, where you feel present instead of scattered, where you feel whole instead of fragmented. It's a life that feels light enough to carry and rich enough to cherish. And that life? It's not someday. It's not when you retire, when you have more money, when the kids are older, when things calm down. That life is available right now, today, in this moment. All you have to do is choose it, the beginning. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a life designed by you, for you, a life that honors who you are instead of performing who you think you should be, a life that feels aligned instead of chaotic, simple instead of complicated, intentional instead of reactive. You have everything you need to start. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to wait for anything. You just need to begin. So take a breath, look around at your life, and ask yourself, what would simplicity look like for me? Not for the influencer, not for the minimalist guru, not for your neighbor or your coworker or your family, for you. What would it look like for your life to feel lighter, clearer, more aligned? Whatever answer emerges, that's your starting point. That's your compass. That's your invitation. The world will keep trying to complicate your life. It will keep pushing more at you, more possessions, more commitments, more distractions, more noise, more pressure, more everything. But you get to choose differently. You get to choose less. You get to choose clarity. You get to choose presence. You get to choose alignment. You get to choose simplicity. And when you do, you don't just change your life, you reclaim it. Final words: less is more. It always has been, not because deprivation is noble, but because space is powerful. Not because minimalism is trendy, but because clarity is transformative. Not because simple is easy, but because simple is true. When you strip away everything that doesn't matter, what remains is what always mattered. The people you love, the work that fulfills you, the values that guide you, the moments that fill you, the life that is unmistakably, undeniably, beautifully yours. That's the magic. That's the promise. That's the gift of simplicity. So go live it. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, but intentionally, courageously, honestly. Choose less, choose better, choose what matters, and master the magic of a simple life. Your life is waiting, not out there, not someday. Here, now, in your hands. Live it simply, live it fully, live it yours. Welcome home